This 2-hour Christian sleep meditation brings together peaceful visuals of Jesus by the waves, gentle background music, and soothing scripture readings. Whether for night prayer, quiet devotion, or simply falling asleep in God's presence, let His word calm your spirit and bring you peace tonight. When your body aches and your mind won't quiet, there is a prayer that has comforted generations through the darkest nights. Psalm 6 begins with, "Have mercy on me, Lord, for I am faint," a raw cry that transforms anguish into divine attention. This documentary reveals how these ancient words can become your pathway from physical pain to peaceful rest tonight. When pain holds you in its grip and sleep feels distant, your prayer requires no special words. The 6th Psalm offers no polished phrases or theological arguments, just the raw cry of someone who cannot find rest. It begins with bones in agony and a spirit deeply troubled, speaking directly from that place where language fails and only groaning remains. This is where healing often starts, not with strength, but with honest acknowledgement of our need. Physical suffering creates isolation. Lying awake while others sleep, the darkness magnifies every ache until prayer seems impossible. Yet the psalmist gives voice to this experience, translating physical anguish into words that cross centuries. He speaks of drenching his bed with tears and wearing himself out with groaning, mapping the territory of human suffering with unsettling accuracy. His words create a bridge between your pain and divine attention. Expression itself begins the healing process. Scientific research confirms what this ancient text embodies. Verbalizing pain activates regions of the brain associated with emotional regulation while reducing stress hormones. Giving voice to suffering initiates neurological changes that calm the nervous system. The psalm provides a template for this necessary expression, transforming inarticulate pain into prayer that heaven receives. What makes this cry so powerful is its complete lack of pretense. The psalmist makes no claims of worthiness or religious accomplishment. He offers only his need, his weakness, his desperation. This approach reverses conventional wisdom about approaching the divine. It suggests that our weakness, not our strength, becomes the doorway to God's attention. The prayer works precisely because it requires nothing but honesty. In the middle of the darkest night, something shifts. After pages of lament, the psalmist declares with sudden certainty, "The Lord has heard my cry for mercy." No visible change occurs in his circumstances, yet everything changes in his perception. The same pain that isolated now connects him to divine care. The transition happens not because the suffering disappears, but because the cry has been heard. Tonight, your weakness becomes your greatest asset in prayer. You need no special words, no religious performance, no hidden strength. The simple cry of "Heal me" from a place of authentic need receives immediate attention. The words of Psalm 6 give you language when you have none, turning your anguish into prayer that heaven receives. Let these ancient words become your own as you speak them into the darkness, trusting that the same one who heard the psalmist's cry hears yours tonight. When your body fails and strength disappears, you still receive support from beneath. Psalm 41 speaks to the experience of being sustained on the sick bed, not through immediate healing, but through divine preservation. The Hebrew word translated as sustain carries the meaning of being propped up or supported from below, much like pillars holding a structure that cannot stand on its own. This imagery transforms the experience of illness from one of abandonment to one of hidden support. The bed of sickness often feels like a place of isolation, where God seems distant. Yet the psalm reinterprets this space as one where divine encounter becomes possible precisely because human strength has ended. When you cannot rise, you become aware of the support holding you up. This is not yet healing in the sense of restoration to health, but it is preservation in the midst of suffering. The promise operates in the tension between what is needed and what is provided, offering exactly enough for the present moment. Medical research confirms that patients who draw on spiritual resources report lower levels of perceived pain and demonstrate improved coping mechanisms. This scientific observation aligns with the psalmist's ancient wisdom about divine sustenance. The body's response to suffering changes when the mind perceives support beyond visible circumstances. The sickbed becomes not a place of loneliness, but of minka, space where human weakness encounters divine strength in practical ways. When words fail and prayer feels impossible, the very act of breathing can become your prayer. Each inhalation receives the sustenance offered. Each exhalation releases what cannot be carried alone. The psalm provides words for those who cannot form them, but it also validates the wordless prayers of those too weary to speak. Your fatigue becomes the empty space that divine support fills. Your silence the room that God's presence occupies. The promise, the Lord sustains them on their sick bed, offers concrete comfort, precisely because it requires nothing from you. You need not achieve some spiritual state or muster faith you do not possess. The support comes not as reward for effort, but as gift to the helpless. This changes how you experience the long hours of illness, transforming them from time to endure into time to receive. Your weakness becomes the condition for experiencing strength beyond your own. Tonight, as you lie awake or struggle for rest, know that you are being upheld. The same one who sustained the psalmist provides support beneath your weakness. You need not try to stand when standing is impossible. Instead, receive the support being given. Feel the propping up from beneath, and let your breathing become the prayer your words cannot form. The sickbed becomes holy ground where human limitation meets divine provision in the darkness. When shadows deepen and the path disappears beneath your feet, a presence walks beside you in the valley. Psalm 23 provides the most enduring imagery for divine protection, replacing fear with companionship in the darkest places. The ancient listeners understood shepherding not as romantic imagery, but as practical, dangerous work. They knew the shepherd's role involved constant vigilance against predators and careful guidance through treacherous terrain. This background gives weight to the declaration that the Lord serves as your shepherd. The darkest valley triggers instinctual fears that bypass rational thought. Night amplifies these primal responses, making protection feel distant and threats feel immediate. The shepherd imagery directly addresses this experience by placing a protective figure in the midst of danger. The rod and staff represent both weapon and guide tools for defense against attack and for correction when the sheep stray toward danger. These are not symbols of gentle leadership, but of active, engaged protection. Psychological research confirms that guided imagery involving protective figures reduces measurable anxiety during nighttime hours. The brain responds to vivid mental pictures of safety by decreasing stress hormone production and activating calming neural pathways. When you visualize the shepherd's presence, your nervous system receives the signal that protection is present. This scientific understanding aligns with the Psalm's ancient wisdom about how mental focus affects physical responses. The phrase "I will fear no evil" functions as declaration rather than emotion. It does not suggest the absence of fear, but the presence of greater reality. The statement acknowledges evil's existence while asserting its ultimate powerlessness against divine protection. This becomes a practice of speaking truth into fear, of naming reality beyond present feeling. The declaration gains its power from who makes it, not from your strength, but from the shepherd's character. What does it mean that the Lord is your shepherd, guiding through dark valleys? It means protection operates independently of your perception. The shepherd sees dangers you cannot detect and navigates terrain that confuses you. Your fear does not diminish the protection offered, it simply makes you unaware of it. The shadows that frighten you become the very place where the shepherd's presence proves most tangible. Your fear tonight meets a greater reality in the darkness. The protection described does not remove the valley, but provides companionship within it. The rod defends against what would destroy you. The staff guides where you would wander into danger. These tools work whether you feel their effect or understand their operation. The shepherd's attention remains fixed on the path ahead and the threats around, allowing you to rest despite the terrain. The Valley of Shadows becomes a place of intimate guidance rather than solitary fear. Each step forward occurs under watchful care, each moment of uncertainty met with firm direction. The declaration, "I will fear no evil," grows from trust in the shepherd's competence rather than denial of danger as reality. This trust transforms the valley from place of terror to place of revelation where you discover protection that was always present but now becomes personal. When your thoughts race through endless scenarios while your body lies still, the mind travels where the body cannot follow. The green pastures and quiet waters of Psalm 23 offer more than peaceful scenery. They present a mental landscape designed to calm the anxious mind. This imagery works because it addresses the core problem of mental agitation that prevents physical rest, creating a counter-narrative to the internal turmoil that exhausts you despite your physical stillness. The pastures represent provision rather than decoration. In the ancient Near Eastern context, green pastures meant survival for the flock, adequate nourishment in a landscape often characterized by scarcity and danger. The quiet waters similarly signified safe drinking places rather than turbulent streams where sheep might be swept away. These images convey not aesthetic pleasure, but fundamental provision for basic needs. Your anxious mind, racing through future worries and past regrets, finds in these pictures a reminder that your core needs are met, regardless of circumstances. Still waters require intentional cessation of movement. Sheep will drink from rushing streams, but the shepherd leads them to places where the water runs calm and deep. This stopping represents a deliberate shift from constant mental activity to receptive stillness. The neuroscience behind this imagery reveals why it works. Visualizations of natural landscapes activate the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering heart rate and reducing cortisol levels. Your brain responds to these mental pictures as if you were actually present in such environments, triggering physiological changes that promote rest. The shepherd leads to these places, the sheep do not find them on their own. This distinction matters for the anxious mind that believes it must solve its own problems through constant thinking. The imagery suggests that rest comes not through your effort to calm yourself, but through following the one who knows where tranquility exists. The mental shift involves releasing the need to navigate your own anxieties, and instead accepting guidance to spaces of provision you could not locate independently. These images become a practical script for calming your breathing and inner rhythm. As you visualize green pastures, your breathing can deepen to match the expansive openness. As you imagine still waters, your exhale can lengthen to mirror the calm surface. The mental picture synchronizes with physical responses, creating a feedback loop where calm imagery produces calm physiology, which then reinforces the mental image. This practice does not eliminate problems, but changes your relationship to them. Your breathing tonight can sync with this rhythm of provision. Each inhalation receives the nourishment of green pastures. Each exhalation releases into the stillness of quiet waters. The anxious thoughts that circle endlessly meet a different reality, one where provision exists independent of your worrying and stillness operates beyond your striving. The shepherd's guidance leads your mind to rest just as it led the sheep to pastures, offering a path out of mental turbulence into spacious peace. The imagery works precisely because it bypasses direct confrontation with anxiety. Instead of fighting worried thoughts, it offers an alternative focus that naturally diminishes their power. Your mind cannot maintain simultaneous focus on green pastures and catastrophic scenarios. The vividness of the provided imagery displaces the destructive patterns. This is not positive thinking but receptive attention to a greater reality that already surrounds you. When the storm rages, not around you but within you, the refuge described in Psalm 46 becomes essential. Internal turbulence often feels more threatening than external circumstances because it cannot be escaped through physical movement or environmental change. The mind's tempests create their own reality, convincing you that chaos defines existence rather than representing a temporary state. This psalm addresses precisely this experience, offering an anchor that holds despite the internal weather. The Hebrew word translated as refuge carries the specific meaning of a secure height above danger. This is not hiding in a basement during a storm, but positioning yourself on high ground where the flood cannot reach. The imagery suggests perspective as much as protection, a place from which you can see the storm without being destroyed by it. This elevated position changes your relationship to the turbulence below, allowing you to observe without being overwhelmed. The phrase ever-present help indicates constant availability rather than occasional intervention. This distinction matters for the anxious mind that fears being abandoned during critical moments. The help does not come and go based on your perception or performance, but remains steadily accessible regardless of circumstances. This constancy provides the foundation for confronting internal chaos, knowing the resource never diminishes or withdraws. Scientific research on prayer and spiritual practices shows decreased activity in the amygdala during these exercises. This region of the brain processes fear and threat responses, and its calming indicates a neurological shift toward safety. The body responds to spiritual focus by reducing the physiological markers of anxiety, creating a feedback loop where calm begets greater calm. This biological response aligns with the Psalm's promise of refuge, demonstrating how spiritual practices affect physical reality. The command "Be still" addresses both external and internal chaos. In the original context, this phrase likely meant ceasing frantic activity rather than achieving total silence. It suggests stopping the desperate attempts to solve, control, or escape the storm through human effort. This cessation creates space for divine action that operates independently of your striving. The stillness is not passive resignation, but active trust in a greater power. How does God as our refuge and strength become your anchor in internal storms? It functions as a declarative statement that reorients your perception toward reality beyond feeling. The refuge exists whether you feel protected or not. The strength operates whether you feel strong or weak. This anchor holds not because of your grip on it, but because of its inherent stability. Your racing thoughts meet something unmovable. Your chaotic emotions encounter something unshakable. The presence described does not always calm the storm immediately, but always provides shelter within it. You may still feel the wind and rain, but you are no longer exposed to their full force. The refuge creates a space where you can wait out the turbulence without being destroyed by it. This changes the experience of anxiety from something that threatens your existence to something that tests your security. Your racing thoughts tonight meet this unmovable presence. The same refuge that sheltered generations remains available to you now. The command to be still becomes an invitation to stop striving and start receiving. The help that is ever present waits for your attention, not your achievement. The storm may continue, but you dwell in a shelter that stands firm against all that would disturb your peace. When your body fails in ways medicine cannot explain and hope feels like a distant country, Psalm 103 presents healing not as selective intervention, but as comprehensive restoration. Chronic illness creates a particular loneliness where divine healing appears to favor others while passing over your condition. The isolation intensifies when symptoms persist despite prayer, making the promise of healing feel conditional or arbitrary. This tension between divine promise and physical reality forms the ground where faith either falters or finds deeper roots. The Hebrew language of this psalm uses terms that encompass complete restoration. The word translated heals carries meanings of mending, curing, and making whole, while diseases includes every form of sickness, weakness, and infirmity. This linguistic breadth matters because it prevents limiting God's healing to only certain categories of illness. The text makes no distinction between conditions with clear medical explanations and those that remain mysterious to physicians. All fall within the scope of divine restoration. Medical research confirms that hope and expectation influence immune function and recovery rates. Patients who maintain hopeful outlooks demonstrate measurable improvements in immune markers and pain tolerance, regardless of their specific diagnosis. This scientific observation aligns with the Psalm's holistic approach to healing, suggesting that the spiritual and physical dimensions of health cannot be separated. The body responds to hope as tangible reality, not merely positive thinking. The pairing of forgiveness and healing in the psalm reveals a connection between spiritual and physical wholeness. The text does not suggest that all illness results from personal sin, but it acknowledges that unresolved guilt and shame can manifest as physical symptoms. The healing described operates on multiple levels, simultaneously addressing the spiritual roots while also ministering to physical manifestations. This integrated approach recognizes that human beings are not collections of separate parts, but unified wholes. How does He heals all your diseases become your reality tonight? It begins by expanding your understanding of what healing encompasses. Complete restoration may include physical cure, but it also involves peace in the midst of symptoms, purpose despite limitations, and community where isolation once reigned. The healing promise covers every dimension of your need: the physical pain, the emotional distress, the spiritual questioning, and the social consequences of illness. Your illness meets a healer who sees beyond symptoms to underlying needs. The same one who forgives your iniquities also heals your diseases, recognizing that wholeness requires both spiritual and physical restoration. This comprehensive approach refuses to separate your body from your soul, your physical pain from your emotional wounds. The healing offered addresses you as a complete person, rather than a collection of symptoms to be eliminated. The promise operates independently of medical prognosis or human understanding. Diseases that baffle physicians fall within the scope of divine knowledge and care. Conditions that have no name in medical literature have names in heaven. The healing described does not wait for human comprehension, but proceeds according to divine wisdom. Your unknown illness is fully known to the one who heals all diseases. Tonight, your particular suffering meets comprehensive restoration. The words "all your diseases" include your specific condition, your unique pain, your unanswered questions. The healing promised may come in forms you do not expect, through gradual improvement rather than instant cure, through peace amidst ongoing symptoms, through community support where isolation reigned. But the promise remains. Your brokenness encounters heaven's wholeness in every dimension of your need. When darkness falls and consciousness recedes, your vulnerability feels most exposed. The night strips away daytime distractions, leaving you aware of every sound and sensation that might signal danger. This heightened awareness served ancient humans well when predators threatened, but now it amplifies anxieties that have no physical form. Psalm 121 addresses this primal experience with a promise that transforms nighttime from period of fear to season of protection. The psalm begins with looking toward the mountains, which represented both danger and divine perspective in the ancient world. Travelers feared the heights where bandits waited and storms gathered, yet also recognized them as places where heaven seemed closer. This tension between threat and transcendence mirrors your nighttime. Experience the darkness contains both imagined dangers and potential encounter with the divine. The psalm resolves this tension by declaring that help comes not from the mountains themselves, but from the one who made them. The Hebrew verbs describing God's protection use grammatical forms indicating continuous, unbroken action. The keeping never pauses, never diminishes, never ceases. This linguistic precision matters because it assures you that divine attention does not waver during the hours when human vigilance fails. While you sleep, the protection continues uninterrupted, operating independently of your awareness or appreciation. Sleep research confirms that perceived safety dramatically improves sleep quality and duration. People who feel secure fall asleep faster, experience deeper sleep cycles, and awaken more refreshed. This scientific observation aligns with the Psalm's spiritual promise, demonstrating how feeling watched over produces measurable physical benefits. Your body responds to the belief in protection by releasing hormones that promote rest rather than hormones that maintain alertness. The keeper neither slumbers nor sleeps. This statement distinguishes divine vigilance from human watchfulness. Human guards must eventually rest, creating gaps in protection. Divine attention knows no such limitations. The protection remains constant whether you feel it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you sleep deeply or lie awake worrying. This assurance allows you to relinquish the exhausting task of self-protection. What does He watches over your life mean for your nocturnal safety? It means your vulnerability is covered by wakeful protection that never diminishes. Your breathing while asleep receives the same attention as your prayers while awake. Your unconscious moments are as guarded as your conscious ones. The protection operates at levels beyond your perception, preventing dangers you cannot see and thwarting threats you cannot imagine. This watching is not surveillance, but safeguard. The verb implies caring attention rather than critical observation. The same one who numbered the stars and named the constellations numbers your breaths and names your fears. The scale of divine attention encompasses both cosmic order and personal safety, infinite knowledge and intimate care. Your sleep becomes guarded by wakeful divinity tonight. The protection does not depend on your ability to feel it or understand it. You need not strain to believe or struggle to perceive. The keeping continues regardless of your state, surrounding your rest with vigilance that never tires. The same keeper who guarded ancient travelers through dangerous mountain passes guards you through the vulnerable hours of night. The mountains that represented danger become witnesses to protection. The night that heightened fear becomes evidence of faithfulness. Your vulnerability, instead of being something to conceal, becomes the occasion for divine care. The keeper who never sleeps transforms your rest into protected space, your darkness into guarded haven, your vulnerability into opportunity for divine demonstration. When isolation convinces you that you face the darkness alone, Psalm 139 describes an embrace that surrounds you completely. The feeling of divine absence often intensifies during nighttime hours, when physical senses provide no confirmation of presence. This perceived isolation makes protection seem theoretical, rather than tangible, turning promises into abstract concepts rather than experienced reality. The tension between what faith asserts and what feeling denies creates the space where this psalm operates with particular power. The phrase "you hem me in behind and before" uses imagery of complete enclosure. The Hebrew verb suggests being surrounded, enclosed, and confined in the most protective sense. This is not restriction but safekeeping, not limitation but security. The simultaneous protection from behind and before indicates coverage from what has passed and what is coming, addressing both past regrets and future anxieties that often surface during sleepless nights. The imagery creates a sense of being completely encompassed. Psychological research confirms that feeling watched over reduces measurable anxiety during vulnerable hours. The brain responds to perceived protection by decreasing cortisol production and activating neural pathways associated with safety. This biological response occurs regardless of whether the protection is visibly demonstrated, indicating that the perception itself creates physiological change. The body accepts what the mind struggles to believe, responding to spiritual truth even when emotions contradict it. This encircling presence differs fundamentally from surveillance. Surveillance implies scrutiny for fault-finding, while this protection suggests safeguarding for well-being. The same knowledge that could feel invasive instead becomes comforting when understood as loving attention. The one who knows your thoughts before you form them, who understands your words before you speak them, uses this knowledge not for judgment but for care. The intimacy that could feel exposure instead becomes sanctuary. The protection operates independently of your awareness. You may feel completely alone while being completely surrounded. The enclosure continues whether you perceive it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you feel worthy of it or not. This reality stands firm against the shifting sands of emotion and circumstance. Your feelings about the protection do not affect the protection itself, only your experience of it. What does this encompassing presence mean for your night? It means your loneliness meets companionship that will not abandon you. Your isolation encounters connection that cannot be broken. Your vulnerability finds shelter that cannot be penetrated. The embrace surrounds you completely, leaving no area exposed to harm. No aspect of your being uncovered by care. This is not partial protection but complete safekeeping. The imagery transforms how you understand your position in the darkness. You are not alone in a vast emptiness, but held in a secure embrace. You are not exposed to unseen dangers, but enclosed in demonstrated protection. The same hands that formed the universe hold you through the night. The same mind that designed creation attends to your needs. The scale of divine attention encompasses both cosmic order and personal care. Tonight, your loneliness meets this encompassing companionship. You need not feel it to receive it, nor understand it to benefit from it. The protection operates according to divine faithfulness rather than human perception. The embrace that surrounded the psalmist surrounds you now. The enclosure that protected generations protects you tonight. Your isolation becomes the occasion for discovering presence that was always there, waiting for your recognition. The darkness that magnifies loneliness instead reveals companionship. The silence that amplifies isolation instead confirms presence. The vulnerability that creates fear instead demonstrates protection. You are hemmed in behind and before, surrounded on all sides by care that does not sleep or withdraw. The embrace holds you through the night and into the morning, constant and sure. When emotional pain persists long after physical wounds have healed, the heart's brokenness requires a different kind of care. Psalm 147 addresses this deep interior suffering with a promise that encompasses both the cause and symptom of heartbreak. The Hebrew term translated as broken-hearted includes not just emotional distress, but crushed spirit and shattered will. This comprehensive understanding of heartbreak recognizes that emotional pain affects every dimension of human existence, leaving no area untouched by its impact. The tension between physical and emotional healing becomes most apparent in their duration. Physical suffering often follows predictable patterns of injury and recovery, while emotional pain may linger for years without clear resolution. The psalm meets this prolonged suffering with assurance that divine healing operates on timelines beyond human understanding. The restoration described works at levels deeper than conscious awareness, addressing root causes that may remain hidden from your perception. Scientific research demonstrates that spiritual practices can physically rewire neural pathways associated with grief and emotional pain. The brain's plasticity allows new patterns of thought and feeling to replace entrenched cycles of suffering. This neurological reality aligns with the Psalm's spiritual promise, showing how spiritual healing produces measurable changes in brain function. Your emotional pain is not just metaphorically healed, but physically transformed through these practices. The same God who names the stars and understands cosmic order knows your pain by name. The psalm makes this connection explicitly, juxtaposing divine power over creation with intimate knowledge of human suffering. This contrast emphasizes that the healing offered comes from unlimited resources applied with precise personal attention. Your specific heartbreak receives the same careful consideration as the ordering of galaxies. How does He heals the brokenhearted become your experience tonight? It begins by acknowledging that emotional restoration often follows different patterns than physical healing. The process may involve uncovering hidden wounds, addressing forgotten memories, or healing relationships you thought beyond repair. The healing encompasses not just the symptom of pain, but its source, not just the feeling of brokenness, but its underlying causes. Your hidden wounds meet personalized care that recognizes their unique origin and impact. The healing is not generic application of comfort, but specific attention to your particular history. The same one who understands why certain words hurt and certain memories trigger pain brings restoration exactly where it is needed. This personalized care operates beyond surface symptoms to address the roots of your suffering. The healing described works gradually rather than instantly, like dawn slowly dispersing darkness. You may not feel immediate change, but will notice over time that the pain has lessened its grip. The broken heart slowly mends, the crushed spirit gradually lifts, the shattered will progressively strengthens. This gradual restoration allows for integration of healing into every aspect of your life. Tonight, your emotional fractures meet this meticulous repair. The same careful attention that placed stars in their courses now attends to the broken places within you. The healing may come through tears rather than words, through silence rather than explanation, through time rather than instant miracle. But the promise remains. Your heartbreak will meet comprehensive restoration that leaves no wound unhealed, no pain unaddressed, no brokenness unrepaired. The personalized care continues through the night hours when emotional pain often intensifies. Your hidden wounds do not escape divine notice simply because they remain concealed from others. The healing operates in the secret places where you guard your pain most carefully, bringing light to darkness and wholeness to brokenness. Your heart finds restoration not because you deserve it, but because you need it. Not because you earned it, but because you received it. When healing remains elusive despite earnest prayer, hidden barriers may block the restoration you seek. Psalm 32 reveals how unconfessed sin can manifest as physical distress, creating a connection between spiritual burden and bodily suffering. The text describes bones wasting away and strength drying up like summer heat. using physical imagery to depict the consequences of concealed guilt. This ancient wisdom anticipates modern understanding of how emotional and spiritual states affect physical health. The Hebrew language of this psalm connects forgiveness with bearing away guilt. The words suggest not merely overlooking offense, but actively removing its weight and consequences. This distinction matters because it transforms forgiveness from abstract concept to tangible action. The guilt is not simply pardoned, but carried away, creating space for healing to enter where burden once resided. The physical symptoms described in the psalm reflect the bodily cost of carrying what was meant to be borne by divine grace. Medical research confirms that confession and disclosure reduce measurable inflammation markers in the body. The act of verbalizing hidden failings decreases stress-related physiological responses, demonstrating how spiritual practices affect physical wellness. This scientific observation aligns with the psalmist's experience of distress easing when silence ended and confession began. The body responds to truth-telling with measurable relief, validating the connection between honesty and wholeness. Silence about sin creates physical distress according to the psalm's testimony. The text describes the physical toll of unacknowledged wrongdoing using vivid imagery of dehydration and bodily decay. This connection between concealed transgression and manifested symptom reveals how spiritual reality affects physical existence. The body bears witness to what the spirit conceals, speaking through symptoms what the mouth refuses to acknowledge. Forgiveness removes the barrier to receiving healing by restoring relationship. The divine-human connection functions as the conduit through wholeness flows, and unconfessed sin disrupts this connection. The forgiveness described does not merely eliminate guilt, but restores access to the source of all healing. This reopening of relationship allows the healing that was always available to finally reach its destination. How does "you forgave the guilt of my sin" open the way for wholeness? It operates by removing the obstacle that blocked restoration's flow. The forgiveness does not automatically produce healing, but creates the conditions where healing becomes possible. The guilt that weighed down both spirit and body is lifted. The barrier that separated you from divine help is removed. The silence that prevented wholeness is broken. Your concealed shame meets liberating confession tonight. The same forgiveness that relieved the psalmist's distress remains available to you now. The guilt you carry may have manifested as physical symptoms, emotional distress, or spiritual distance. The confession needed is not necessarily public declaration, but honest acknowledgement before the one who already knows your heart completely. This honest admission changes nothing about divine knowledge, but everything about your receptivity. The liberation comes not because you deserve it, but because you need it. Not because you earned it, but because you received it. The forgiveness operates according to divine character rather than human merit. Your concealed shame meets unconditional grace that requires only your acknowledgement to become effective. The burden is lifted not by your strength, but by your surrender, not by your hiding, but by your honesty. The physical symptoms that may have developed from carried guilt now meet their remedy in released burden. The body that bore the weight of unconfessed sin now experiences the relief of forgiveness. The healing that was blocked now flows freely. The restoration that was delayed now proceeds unimpeded. Your concealed shame becomes confessed truth. Your hidden burden becomes lifted weight. Your blocked healing becomes available wholeness. When night falls and the distractions of day recede, your worries emerge with amplified intensity. The darkness that brings physical rest often awakens mental turmoil, turning your bed into a battlefield of unresolved concerns. Psalm 4 addresses this tension directly, presenting peace not as the absence of trouble, but as the presence of trust amid ongoing difficulty. The psalmist speaks from a place where problems persist, yet rest becomes possible. creating a model for sleeping through storms rather than waiting for them to cease. The Hebrew word translated as peace carries meanings of completeness, security, and wholeness. This understanding transforms the concept from mere calmness to comprehensive well-being that operates independently of circumstances. The peace described is not fragile tranquility easily broken by external events, but deep-seated wholeness that remains intact despite surrounding chaos. This distinction matters because it offers rest that does not depend on solving every problem before bedtime. Sleep research confirms that trust practices significantly improve sleep onset latency. The time required to fall asleep decreases when individuals engage in exercises that shift focus from problems to trust. This scientific observation aligns with the Psalm's ancient wisdom, demonstrating how spiritual practices produce measurable physical benefits. Your body responds to trust by activating parasympathetic nervous system responses that prepare you for rest rather than vigilance. This peace originates in relationship rather than changed circumstances. The psalmist lies down amid unresolved troubles because his security rests not in their elimination, but in divine presence. The relationship provides anchor points that hold firm when situations remain unstable. This shifts the focus from manipulating external realities to nurturing internal connection, from controlling outcomes to deepening trust. How does "I will lie down and sleep in peace" become your reality tonight? It begins by acknowledging that peace and problems can coexist. You need not eliminate every worry before resting. You simply need to place those worries in context of greater security. The declaration functions as intentional choice rather than passive feeling, as determined position rather than emotional state. Your worries meet a trust that sleeps despite unresolved problems. This trust does not deny reality, but reinterprets it through the lens of divine faithfulness. The same one who sustained you through yesterday's troubles remains capable of handling tonight's concerns. Your role shifts from problem solver to truster, from vigilant watcher to peaceful sleeper. The practice involves surrender rather than struggle, release rather than resistance. You release your grip on problems you cannot solve tonight, surrendering them to hands that never sleep. This surrender is not abandonment, but wise delegation, not negligence, but recognition of limitation. You acknowledge what you cannot control and entrust it to one who controls all things. Tonight, your racing thoughts meet this steadfast trust. The same peace that allowed the psalmist to sleep amid adversity becomes available to you. You need not understand how it works to receive it, nor eliminate your problems to experience it. The peace comes as gift rather than achievement, as provision rather than prize. Your breathing can synchronize with this rhythm of trust. Each exhalation releases a concern, each inhalation receives peace. The worries that demand attention meet quiet assurance that they can wait until morning. The problems that seem urgent tonight will appear different in daylight, and peace allows you to reach that daylight refreshed rather than exhausted. The bed that felt like battlefield becomes place of refuge. The night that amplified anxiety becomes season of rest. Your worries do not disappear but lose their power to disturb your peace. The trust that sleeps despite problems becomes your experience tonight, not because circumstances change, but because perspective shifts. You lie down in peace because you lie down in trust. You sleep securely because you sleep surrendered. When troubles multiply and intertwine until they form a web of constriction, your need exceeds simple solutions. Psalm 34 presents deliverance, not as partial relief, but as comprehensive rescue from every form of trouble. The Hebrew word translated as troubles carries meanings of tight places, constraints, and narrow straight situations where movement becomes impossible and options disappear. This understanding reveals how divine deliverance operates in circumstances where human solutions fail and escape routes close. Multiple pressures create a particular overwhelm because they interact and amplify each other. Financial stress exacerbates health concerns, relational tensions intensify emotional distress, and spiritual doubts magnify practical problems. These interconnected troubles form a complex system where addressing one aspect alone brings little relief. The psalm meets this complexity with a promise that covers every dimension of need without requiring you to separate or prioritize your problems. The word all in the deliverance promise carries particular weight. It implies no trouble falls outside divine intervention's scope. No situation exists beyond rescue's reach. This comprehensive coverage addresses the fear that some problems might be too trivial for divine attention, or too severe for divine solution. The deliverance described operates without exceptions or qualifications, embracing every form of trouble, regardless of origin or duration. Research into holistic healing approaches confirms that addressing multiple symptom sources simultaneously produces better outcomes than isolated treatments. The body's systems interconnect so completely that intervention at one level affects all others. This scientific understanding aligns with the Psalm's spiritual promise, demonstrating how comprehensive deliverance matches human design. Your complex needs meet multifaceted solutions that address root causes rather than surface symptoms. Deliverance comes through seeking rather than passive waiting. The Hebrew verbs indicate active pursuit of divine help rather than hopeful anticipation of random intervention. This active posture changes your relationship to problems, from victim to seeker, from passive sufferer to active participant in your deliverance. The seeking involves both crying out for help and trusting in its provision, both asking and believing. How does he delivers them from all their troubles? Become your experience. It begins by recognizing that deliverance may come through multiple channels simultaneously. Practical help may arrive alongside emotional comfort. Physical healing may accompany spiritual renewal. Relational restoration may occur with financial provision. The deliverance works holistically, addressing your needs through coordinated interventions rather than isolated solutions. Your complex problems meet this multifaceted deliverance tonight. The same one who understands how your troubles interconnect coordinates solutions that address them comprehensively. The deliverance may not remove every problem instantly, but will provide exactly what you need for each aspect of your situation. The tight places begin to open, the constraints start to loosen, the narrow straits widen enough for movement. The deliverance operates according to divine wisdom rather than human understanding. Solutions may come in forms you do not expect through means you cannot predict. The rescue that arrives may address deeper needs than those you recognized, bringing deliverance that lasts beyond temporary relief. Your limited perspective meets unlimited wisdom in designing your rescue. Tonight, your interconnected troubles meet coordinated deliverance. The same comprehensive rescue that freed the psalmist remains available to you. You need not understand how it works to receive it, nor unravel your problems to qualify for it. The deliverance comes because you seek it, not because you deserve it, because you need it, not because you earned it. Your crying out activates the promise. Your seeking initiates the deliverance. Your trusting receives the rescue. The troubles that felt overwhelming meet solutions that are more than sufficient. The constraints that limited your movement give way to freedom you could not create. The deliverance from all your troubles becomes your reality. Not because circumstances change instantly, but because rescue operates comprehensively. When your internal monologue turns against you, repeating destructive narratives that feel true because they're familiar, your mind needs intervention from beyond itself. The 42nd Psalm presents a model for this necessary interruption, demonstrating how to engage rather than accept the bleak assessments of a downcast soul. The tension builds when the soul's own voice becomes its greatest adversary, convincing it that isolation defines reality and despair reflects truth. This internal captivity feels inescapable because the prison exists within the mind itself. The psalmist approaches his despair with questioning rather than agreement. He does not accept his soul's assessment, but challenges it directly, creating space between feeling and fact. The question, "Why so downcast, O my soul?" functions as divine interruption to destructive self-talk, inserting doubt where certainty had reigned. This questioning posture prevents the soul from settling into despair as permanent reality, keeping open the possibility of alternative perspectives. Deer imagery deepens this model of internal dialogue. The psalmist compares his soul's longing to a panting deer desperately seeking water, illustrating instinctual yearning that persists despite circumstances. This metaphor validates deep spiritual thirst while directing it toward legitimate satisfaction. The imagery suggests that the downcast soul correctly identifies its need but mistakenly believes that need cannot be met. The longing itself becomes evidence of something missing rather than proof of abandonment. Research into cognitive behavioral approaches confirms that questioning negative self-talk reduces depressive symptoms measurably. The practice of examining automatic thoughts for accuracy and replacing them with balanced perspectives produces neurological changes that alleviate despair. This scientific observation aligns with the psalmist's ancient wisdom about how internal dialogue affects emotional states. The brain responds to redirected thoughts by creating new neural pathways that support hope rather than despair. Hope emerges from remembering rather than present feeling. The psalmist commands his soul to hope in God based on past faithfulness rather than current experience. This practice of recollection creates an alternative narrative to the one the downcast soul tells itself. The memory of past deliverance becomes evidence against present despair, building a case for hope that feelings cannot refute. This shift from feeling to memory changes the foundation of internal dialogue from emotion to history. How does "Why so downcast, O my soul?" transform your internal conversation? It provides a template for engaging destructive self-talk without being controlled by it. The question creates pause where automatic thoughts once flowed unchallenged, inserting space between stimulus and response. This space allows divine perspective to interrupt the downward spiral, offering alternative interpretations of experience. Your internal monologue meets external truth that redefines reality.
Your destructive self-talk meets redirection toward hope tonight. The same questioning that challenged the psalmist's despair can challenge yours. You need not believe the alternative perspective immediately to benefit from the interruption. The simple act of questioning your soul's assessment creates possibility where certainty once reigned. The downcast soul that believed its own narrative now encounters doubt about that narrative's accuracy. This redirection operates gradually rather than instantly. The internal dialogue that took years to develop requires time to redirect. Each question chips away at despair's foundation. Each memory of faithfulness weakens hopelessness's grip. The soul that accepted its own assessment now learns to question it, creating space for hope to grow where despair once flourished. your destructive self-talk meets persistent redirection that slowly transforms your internal world. The conversation continues through the night where negative thoughts often intensify. Your questioning need not eliminate despair immediately to be effective. The simple act of engaging rather than accepting begins the transformation. Your downcast soul meets divine interruption that questions its conclusions and redirects its gaze. The internal dialogue that once led to despair now leads toward hope, one questioned thought at a time. When your body betrays you and your spirit falters, your limitations become the canvas for divine sufficiency. Psalm 73 confronts the raw truth of human fragility without spiritual pretense, acknowledging what illness often whispers in the dark. That physical breakdown feels like spiritual failure. The tension between body and soul intensifies when weakness persists despite prayer, creating a crisis where faith seems inadequate to meet flesh's limitations. This psalm meets that crisis with honesty that validates your experience while revealing deeper reality. The writer names the failure directly. My flesh and my heart may fail. This admission carries weight because it comes from someone who previously struggled with envy toward the healthy and prosperous. His journey through bitterness to acceptance makes his confession more credible than easy answers from those untouched by sustained suffering. The acknowledgement does not celebrate weakness, but recognizes it as reality that must be faced rather than denied. This honesty creates space for genuine help rather than pretended strength. Medical research confirms that acceptance of chronic illness correlates with improved pain management and quality of life. Patients who stop fighting their limitations and work within them demonstrate better adaptation and reduced suffering. This scientific observation aligns with the psalmist's spiritual discovery, showing how acceptance opens doors that resistance keeps closed. Your body's failure need not mean your spirit's defeat when met with truthful acknowledgement. The turning point arrives not when circumstances change, but when perspective shifts in divine presence. The psalmist enters the sanctuary and everything changes, though nothing alters externally. His weakness remains, but now appears in context of strength beyond his own. This shift illustrates how divine sufficiency operates alongside human limitation, not always removing it, but always supplementing it. The presence provides not escape from reality, but reinterpretation of it. God remains the strength of heart and body indefinitely, according to the Psalm's conclusion. This promise matters because it offers ongoing support rather than temporary relief. The divine strength does not fluctuate with your capacity, but remains constant whether you feel strong or weak. This assurance transforms how you experience limitation from permanent deficit to temporary condition met with eternal resource. Your weakness meets inexhaustible power tonight. The same strength that sustained the psalmist remains available to you, not to make you independent, but to make you sustained. The divine sufficiency does not eliminate your need, but meets it completely, not remove your limitation, but work within it. Your failing flesh and heart become the occasion for discovering strength that never fails. The admission, "My flesh and my heart may fail," leads to the discovery, "But God is the strength of my heart." The conjunction transforms the statement from despair to hope, from problem to solution, from ending to beginning. Your limitation ceases to be final word and becomes opening for divine intervention. The very thing that seemed to disqualify you from spiritual victory becomes the condition for experiencing divine power. Tonight, your physical and emotional failures meet this inexhaustible strength. You need not hide your weakness or pretend capability you do not possess. The divine strength operates most effectively where human strength ends, filling the empty spaces your limitations create. Your failing becomes the doorway to sustaining, your weakness the occasion for strength, your admission the beginning of provision. The power that holds galaxies remains available to hold you through this night. The strength that raised Christ from death remains sufficient for your weariness. Your limitation reveals what was always true, but often hidden. That divine sufficiency meets human need exactly where it exists, transforming failure into discovery of strength beyond measurement. When constant effort produces only fatigue without restoration, your striving meets its necessary end. The 62nd Psalm addresses this exhaustion with a promise of soul-deep rest that transcends physical cessation of activity. The Hebrew word translated as rest carries meanings of silence, stillness, and cessation from struggle. This understanding transforms rest from passive inactivity to active trust, from mere relaxation to profound repose that penetrates the deepest levels of your being. The tension between effort and rest becomes most apparent when striving fails to produce desired results. You work harder only to grow wearier, push further only to achieve less, struggle more only to gain nothing. This cycle of diminishing returns reveals the limitation of human effort and the necessity of divine intervention. The psalm presents an alternative to this exhausting pattern by redirecting focus from your action to God's character. The repetition throughout the psalm emphasizes settled certainty rather than hopeful speculation. The writer declares, "Truly my soul finds rest in God," with conviction born of experience rather than theory. This repetition functions as anchor points for a mind accustomed to doubt, creating neural pathways that support trust rather than anxiety. The certainty grows not from changed circumstances, but from deepened understanding of divine faithfulness. Scientific research confirms that trust activates the body's relaxation response measurably. The physiological shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system dominance occurs when individuals engage in trust-based practices. This biological response aligns with the psalmist's spiritual discovery, demonstrating how soul rest produces physical calm. Your body responds to trust as tangible reality, decreasing cortisol levels and slowing heart rate regardless of external conditions. This rest originates in who God is rather than what you do. The psalm grounds its promise in divine character, God's strength, refuge and trustworthiness rather than human performance. This foundation matters because it makes rest available regardless of your condition or achievement. You need not earn this rest through sufficient striving, but receive it through adequate trust. The shift from doing to trusting transforms your relationship with effort entirely. How does "truly my soul finds rest in God" become your experience tonight? It begins by ceasing the striving that never produced real rest anyway. You stop trying to achieve through effort what can only be received through trust. This cessation is not surrender to defeat, but acceptance of better provision. The rest comes not because you create it, but because you receive it, not because you manufacture it, but because you accept it. Your striving meets ceaseless divine action on your behalf. The same one who holds the universe in order works constantly for your good while you rest. Your cessation of effort does not mean nothing happens. It means everything happens through divine action rather than human striving. This understanding transforms rest from negligence to wisdom, from irresponsibility to appropriate trust. The soul rest described penetrates deeper than physical relaxation. It reaches the core of your being where anxiety resides and striving originates. This profound repose stills not just your body, but your spirit, calming not just your muscles, but your motivations. The weariness that clung to your soul begins to lift as you discover rest that truly refreshes rather than merely postpones exhaustion. Tonight, your striving meets this soul-deep repose. The same rest that sustained the psalmist remains available to you. You need not understand how it works to benefit from it, nor achieve some spiritual state to qualify for it. The rest comes as gift to the weary, as provision to the exhausted, as promise to the striving. Your breathing can synchronize with this rhythm of trust. Each exhalation releases effort. Each inhalation receives rest. The striving that defined your days gives way to trust that characterizes your nights. The weariness that accumulated through constant labor dissipates through receptive repose. Your soul finds rest not because circumstances change, but because focus shifts. Not because problems disappear, but because provision appears.
When uncertainty clouds your tomorrows, and the night hours magnify every doubt, the 25th Psalm offers an anchor for your anxious thoughts. The darkness has a way of stripping away daytime distractions, leaving you alone with concerns about what the future holds. This amplification of worry transforms reasonable concerns into overwhelming fears, making hope feel like a distant luxury rather than present reality. The tension between today's exhaustion and tomorrow's uncertainty creates the space where genuine hope must operate. The Hebrew word translated as hope carries meanings of patient waiting, confident expectation, and steadfast anticipation. This understanding transforms hope from wishful thinking to settled confidence, from vague optimism to certain expectation. The hope described is not passive waiting, but active anticipation. Not desperate crossing of fingers, but confident looking forward. This distinction matters because it grounds hope in reality rather than fantasy, in character rather than circumstance. This hope rests firmly on God's character rather than specific outcomes. The psalmist places his trust not in particular results, but in divine faithfulness, not in preferred scenarios, but in unchanging nature. This foundation makes hope durable when circumstances disappoint and outcomes differ from expectations. The hope remains intact because its object remains constant, its foundation unaffected by changing situations. Your uncertainty meets this steadfast assurance that does not fluctuate with your feelings or facts. Research into pain management reveals that hopeful patients demonstrate significantly higher pain tolerance and better recovery outcomes. The psychological state of hope produces measurable physiological changes that affect how the body experiences and processes suffering. This scientific observation aligns with the Psalm's spiritual promise, showing how hope functions as tangible resource rather than abstract concept. Your body responds to hope as physical reality, not merely emotional state. The psalmist models how to wait hopefully by asking for teaching during the waiting period. This request transforms passive waiting into active preparation, turning apparently empty time into valuable training. The hope described is not static condition but dynamic process, not frozen position but developing relationship. This approach makes the waiting itself meaningful, rather than merely something to endure until rescue arrives. How does my hope, Lord, is in you sustain through long nights? It functions as declaration that reorients your perspective from problems to promise, from circumstances to character. The statement acknowledges present difficulty while affirming future certainty, naming current struggle while confessing ultimate confidence. This practice of speaking hope into darkness changes neurological patterns that support despair, creating new pathways that reinforce expectation. Your anxiety about tomorrow meets today's sufficient grace. The hope described operates in the present moment, providing exactly what you need for this hour without requiring assurance about coming days. This present tense provision allows you to face uncertainty without being paralyzed by it, to acknowledge unknown futures without being controlled by them. The grace for this moment becomes the foundation for hope about next moments. The hope anchors your night, not by eliminating uncertainty, but by providing stability within it. The same faithfulness that sustained you through yesterday's challenges remains available for tonight's anxieties and tomorrow's uncertainties. Your worry about what might happen meets confidence in who remains constant. The darkness that amplifies doubt becomes the context for discovering hope that transcends understanding. Tonight, your uncertainty meets this steadfast assurance. The same hope that anchored the psalmist remains available to you. Not because circumstances guarantee happy outcomes, but because divine character guarantees faithful presence. Your anxiety about tomorrow finds its answer in today's sufficient grace. Your fear about the future meets its remedy in present provision. The hope that is in God rather than outcomes becomes your anchor through the night watches. when your fragility feels like failure and weakness brings shame. The 145th Psalm redefines how divine compassion encounters human limitation. The world often treats weakness as something to hide or overcome through effort, creating tension between what you experience and what you believe you should be. This disparity generates self-judgment that compounds suffering, turning natural human limitation into personal failing. The psalm meets this struggle with a description of compassion that transforms how you understand your own fragility. The Hebrew language of this psalm uses terms that encompass both pity and graciousness in their fullest sense. The words convey not merely feeling sorry for someone, but active identification with their condition. This distinction matters because it elevates compassion from distant sympathy to intimate understanding. The compassion described does not look down from a position of strength, but enters into the experience of weakness, recognizing it as part of the human condition rather than personal deficiency. Research into health outcomes reveals that self-compassion significantly improves both mental and physical wellness. Individuals who approach their limitations with understanding rather than judgment demonstrate better coping strategies and improved recovery rates. This scientific observation aligns with the Psalm's spiritual wisdom, showing how divine compassion becomes the model for how we should view our own weaknesses. Your body responds to compassionate acceptance with measurable physiological benefits. God's compassion extends specifically to all who are falling and bowed down according to the text. This specification addresses the experience of those who cannot stand upright either physically or emotionally. The compassion meets you exactly where you are, not where you think you should be. It does not require you to achieve some state of worthiness before offering help, but comes precisely because you need it. This compassion operates through identification rather than condescension. The divine approach to human weakness demonstrates solidarity rather than superiority, understanding rather than judgment. The same one who upholds the universe understands what it means to be bowed down. The one who possesses all strength comprehends what it means to feel weak. This identification transforms compassion from pity to partnership, from distant concern to intimate care. How does the Lord, as gracious and compassionate, embrace human limitation? It begins by redefining weakness as opportunity for divine demonstration rather than evidence of personal failure. Your fragility becomes the space where compassion operates most effectively. Your limitation, the condition for experiencing grace most fully. The compassion does not remove weakness, but transforms your relationship to it, changing shame into acceptance and judgment into understanding. Your self-judgment meets divine understanding tonight. The same compassion that the psalm describes remains available to you right now. You need not hide your weakness or pretend strength you do not possess. The compassion operates most effectively where human resources end, meeting your limitation with understanding rather than disappointment, with grace rather than requirement. This compassionate approach changes how you view your own struggles. The things you judge most harshly in yourself become the very places where divine compassion ministers most deeply. Your self-criticism gives way to acceptance. Your shame transforms into understanding. Your judgment yields to grace. The compassion that embraces human limitation becomes your experience tonight, not because you deserve it, but because you need it. The night hours often intensify feelings of inadequacy and self-judgment. Your fragility feels more exposed when others sleep, and you lie awake with your limitations. This compassion meets you in that vulnerable space, offering understanding where you offer judgment, providing acceptance where you provide criticism. Your weakness ceases to be something to conceal and becomes something to bring into compassionate light. The divine understanding extends to every dimension of your limitation, physical, emotional, spiritual. The compassion does not sort your weaknesses into categories of more or less acceptable, but embraces them all with equal grace. Your hidden struggles receive the same compassionate attention as your visible ones, your silent sufferings, the same understanding as your expressed pains. Tonight, your self-judgment meets this comprehensive divine understanding that knows your weakness completely and embraces it fully. When distress convinces you that your cries go unheard, the silence feels like abandonment. The 20th Psalm addresses this experience with promises that transform how you understand divine response in moments of overwhelming need. The tension builds when trouble makes God seem distant and prayers appear to vanish into emptiness. This perceived absence intensifies suffering by adding spiritual isolation to practical difficulty, creating a double burden that feels too heavy to carry. The Hebrew verbs describing divine answering carry specific, grammatical weight that indicates immediate and effective response. The language suggests not merely hearing but acting, not simply acknowledging but intervening. This linguistic precision matters because it assures you that the answer begins the moment the cry leaves your lips. The delay you perceive does not reflect divine hesitation, but your limited perspective on how help arrives.